There are moments in public conversations that don't arrive with the force of loud statements or shocking accusations. Instead, they settle into the air with a different kind of weight. Quiet, dense, and unsettling. Not because someone is saying too much, but because they suddenly start saying less. When Kandi Burruss' mother spoke recently, it wasn't her actual words that captured the attention of longtime viewers. It was the hesitation surrounding them. Fans didn't react with outrage or disbelief. They reacted with stillness. They listened again. They replayed the footage. They paid attention to the pauses, the careful phrasing, the way her sentences drifted off before reaching the point that seemed implied. This wasn't the Mama Joyce people were accustomed to seeing. For years, she has built a reputation for being unapologetically direct, often stepping into uncomfortable territory without hesitation. So when she slowed her pace, softened her tone, and left statements unfinished, it created a shift, one that didn't need volume to feel loud. To understand why this small moment resonated so deeply, you have to go back, far back, to the roots of the family narrative that has quietly shaped public perception for more than a decade. Because the truth is, this clip did not exist in isolation, and it didn't generate curiosity simply because of its content. It slid seamlessly into a long-running pattern that seasoned viewers recognized instantly. From the very beginning of Kandi Burruss' relationship with Todd Tucker, things were complicated. Their connection didn't begin in private and later spill into the public sphere. It formed while cameras were rolling, while producers were crafting storylines, and while millions were watching every shift in tone and every subtle change in expression. Reality television blurred the lines between authenticity and performance, and that alone created pressure on every moment of their relationship, pressure that only intensified when extended family opinions became part of the plot. For Kandi, control and independence are survival tools. Her career was built on discipline, consistency, and careful self-management. She has always been confident in her choices, even when others questioned them. Todd, on the other hand, entered her orbit with a quieter presence. Not silent, but reserved. A man who often chose to observe rather than insert himself. These differences weren't dramatic, but they were noticeable, especially to longtime viewers who pay close attention to dynamics rather than dialogue. And where things became truly layered was within the family circle, especially involving Kandi's mother, Mama Joyce. Her doubts were never hinted at, they were declared. She questioned motives, finances, intentions, and dynamics in ways that sometimes made viewers uncomfortable. Regardless of whether audiences agreed with her, her stance seemed rooted in the belief that she was protecting her daughter from something she perceived, even if others did not. Over time, this discomfort didn't explode into one defining confrontation. Instead, it reappeared again and again, subtly in some moments, overtly in others. It became a persistent thread woven into family interactions, interviews, and discussions. And what stood out isn't the conflict itself, but its refusal to fully resolve. Even as the years passed, relationships evolved and milestones were reached, the tension never dissolved. It simply settled into the background like an unresolved chord that everyone had grown used to hearing. That persistence created an unspoken narrative, one where the issues weren't fixed, but managed, not healed, but contained. But as time went on, something about Mama Joyce began to change. Her delivery softened. The raw bluntness that once powered her commentary gave way to measured restraint. Topics that once triggered passionate reactions now seemed to be handled with deliberate caution. A woman who once spoke without fear of consequence suddenly seemed to recognize the weight of her words more consciously. And viewers who had watched this family for years immediately sensed that this shift was not coincidental. It felt learned. It felt intentional. It felt like the product of experience, sometimes difficult experience. This is why the recent clip stood out so sharply. Mama Joyce didn't back away from the topic. She stepped into it cautiously, almost as if she were navigating a fragile line she didn't want to cross. Her eyes shifted, her tone slowed, her thoughts reached the edge of a statement and stopped. And in a family dynamic where subtlety has rarely been a primary tool, that subtlety felt almost jarring. Todd's presence in this context has always been steady. He doesn't raise his voice, doesn't react dramatically, and rarely engages in emotional confrontation, at least publicly. His approach, combined with Mama Joyce's history of directness, created a dynamic over the years that viewers learned how to read. One voice loud, one voice quiet, leaving plenty of space for interpretation in the middle. So when Mama Joyce's tone suddenly mirrored Todd's restraint, when she became careful instead of candid, viewers didn't take it lightly. The reaction wasn't loud, it was observant. Fans watched the clip again, not for clarity, but for nuance. They weren't looking for new information, they were examining behavior. And behavior, especially in long-standing public narratives, can tell its own story. What people noticed was not what Mama Joyce said, but what she avoided saying. Not the statements she made, but the sentences she cut short. This wasn't avoidance in the sense of denial. It was avoidance in the sense of protection. But protection of what or whom remained unclear. In online spaces, silence is louder than speech. When someone known for being unfiltered becomes filtered, audiences instinctively sense significance. So fans began sharing the clip, not with sensational claims, but with simple, open-ended captions. Does this feel off to anyone else? Something about this didn't feel like the usual Mama Joyce. These restrained reactions set the tone for the discussion that followed, thoughtful, curious, and rooted in emotional pattern recognition, rather than scandal. Then came the silence. No clarifications, no interviews, no social media posts reshaping the narrative, just absence. And in public storytelling, absence never stays empty. It fills itself with speculation, projection, and emotional interpretation. Silence, especially from someone known for speak hard, say loud commentary, became the center of attention. And because nothing was said afterward to guide or redirect the conversation, discussions grew naturally, unfiltered by any official response. People began connecting this moment to previous unspoken tensions, to old interviews where similar hesitations appeared, to subtle family dynamics that had been observed but never articulated. Rumors didn't form because someone made claims. They formed because people shared the same emotional impression. This felt different. And when emotional impressions align, they gain power, even without evidence. This is the nature of perception in public narratives. It doesn't rely on facts to grow, it relies on familiarity and pattern recognition. Content creators began discussing the situation cautiously. They analyzed tone, pacing, intentional pauses, and the emotional undercurrent of restraint. They avoided definitive statements, but the very act of analyzing reinforced the moment's perceived significance. When a moment gets repeated enough times, even without new information, it becomes larger, heavier, more symbolic, not because of what happened, but because of what was felt. By the time the conversation reached this point, the moment wasn't about what Mama Joyce said, it was about what she didn't. The narrative shifted from language to absence, from statements to spaces between them. And in public psychology, silence isn't neutral. It creates discomfort. When a story feels unfinished, the human mind automatically looks for resolution. We want clarity, we want closure. And when closure doesn't come, we create meaning out of what isn't there. This is why silence often triggers suspicion, not because silence is guilt, but because our brains struggle with incomplete information. And in this case, the silence carried weight because it came from someone who rarely leaves things unsaid. But here's the complication. Silence is not always a sign of hidden truths. Sometimes it's a boundary. Sometimes it's emotional maturity. Sometimes it's the awareness that not every family conflict belongs on camera or in a headline. Public figures, especially those in reality television, often experience the difficult reality that oversharing can backfire, misinterpretations can spiral, and private matters can be distorted beyond recognition. In those cases, restraint becomes not avoidance, but protection. Protection of relationships, reputations, and personal peace. And with a family as publicly entangled as Kandi's, choosing silence can be a sign of growth rather than concealment. But audiences don't always see restraint as growth. They interpret through memory. Once a viewer believes they recognize a pattern, every new moment is filtered through that history. Pauses feel intentional, neutral comments feel loaded, and small hesitations feel like clues. Perception isn't neutral when it's shaped by years of emotional investment in someone else's story. In the end, what made this moment so powerful is not that something was revealed, it's that something felt revealed, even if nothing truly was. The moment became heavy not because of facts, but because of the meaning viewers projected onto the silence. This isn't a story about exposure. It's a story about perception, how familiarity breeds interpretation, how silence becomes narrative, and how audiences can feel the weight of something simply because it aligns with a history they've been observing for years. Some stories don't end with answers. They end with awareness. Not every silence is a confession. Not every unfinished sentence is a warning. Sometimes silence is simply a boundary, a message that nothing more is meant to be said. Now we want to hear from you. When you watch that moment, whether directly or through this breakdown, how did it land for you? Did the pauses feel meaningful? Did the careful phrasing make you feel like something was being held back? Or did it seem like someone choosing privacy after years of public tension and scrutiny? There's no right or wrong answer here. These interpretations aren't about fact, they're about perception. And perception can differ wildly depending on the viewer, their history with the show, and their own experiences with complicated family dynamics. Some people see protection, others see avoidance, and both can be true at the same time.
However, the moment the news broke, the first shockwave hit social media. Suddenly, fan pages started pulling up old interviews, Bravo clips, reunion specials, and behind-the-scenes commentary. And the deeper everyone dug, the clearer the pattern became. This marriage had cracks long before the divorce paperwork was drafted. For years, people saw strained interactions, emotional distance, conflicting goals, heated arguments, and subtle signs that things were slowly unraveling. But most importantly, the comment sections began filling up with one recurring theme. Mama Joyce was always a problem in this marriage, and maybe, just maybe, her presence made the relationship impossible to sustain. But before we dive deeper into the downfall, let's rewind to a recent moment that perfectly captures the tension. Danielle asked, "How are your mother and Todd getting along?" And the answer came out with a defeated sigh, "Not great." There was a brief celebration, just days prior, when Ace and Blaze had their graduation ceremony. Everybody managed to smile, breathe, and pretend that the family was unified. But by the time the traveler returned home from a trip, the atmosphere had already shifted again. Mama Joyce went straight back to not feeling Todd, not feeling the situation, and not feeling the energy of the household. It was like she had an internal switch labeled disapprove, and at any moment, without warning, she could flip it right back on. And the person speaking admitted they were trying, genuinely trying, to keep the peace, to smooth things over, and to hold the family structure together. But then they added, "Just don't let me catch you," followed by a dramatic declaration that no river, ocean, or desert could keep them from confronting whatever mess pops up. That statement alone could have been the theme song of this entire marriage. See, when Kandi and Todd first got together, most people thought the relationship was sweet, cute, genuine. Todd was working in production, Kandi was already a powerhouse, a singer, songwriter, entrepreneur, and reality star. Their love story seemed grounded, not flashy or calculated. But from the moment Mama Joyce learned Todd's occupation, her alarm started ringing like church bells on a Sunday morning. In her mind, he was not accomplished enough, not wealthy enough, not ambitious enough. She believed Kandi deserved a CEO, a millionaire businessman, or someone with a far more impressive resume. And because Todd came from behind the scenes, she labeled him as someone looking for a come-up. That perception never faded, no matter how long they stayed together. Even Phaedra Parks, who introduced them, felt the heat. Mama Joyce accused her of setting Kandi up with someone below her standard. She made it clear she would have choked Phaedra if she had known Todd worked on the production crew at the time. Her exact words were intense, and fans have never forgotten them. But here's the shocking twist that resurfaced recently. Mama Joyce allegedly never forgave Phaedra for connecting Kandi and Todd. Even after years passed, after children were born, and after family dynamics evolved, she reportedly held Phaedra responsible for the entire relationship. The strange part is that despite all the chaos, Kandi often said marrying Todd was one of the best decisions she ever made. She defended him fiercely, she worked with him on businesses, she built empires alongside him. She even talked openly about their sex life, bragging that they did threesomes and enjoyed it, pushing back against critics who said it would ruin the marriage. She insisted it worked just fine. Her confidence was strong, or at least it seemed that way. Yet, over time, cracks appeared. And with old footage recirculating, fans now see those cracks were actually deep fractures. One of the wildest parts of their journey was the prenup argument, a messy, emotional, and brutally honest situation televised for millions. Kandi wanted a tight prenup. Mama Joyce demanded a tight prenup. Todd resisted. He said the document felt insulting, incomplete, or unfair. Kandi insisted it had been reviewed by multiple lawyers. Todd's pushback escalated into yelling, frustration, and a complete shutdown of communication. And then Mama Joyce delivered the infamous line that she would choke Kandi if she married Todd without the prenup. That moment was explosive, and now that the marriage has ended, people online are replaying the clip like it's a prophecy fulfilled. What complicates things even more is that Todd is reportedly considering seeking alimony. In Georgia, if one spouse earns significantly more than the other, which Kandi undeniably does, alimony is on the table. He also allegedly plans to argue that he has no stable housing since selling his New Jersey apartment. Combined with the fact that marital assets accumulated during marriage are subject to division, even with the prenup, it creates a whole new battlefield. And as if that wasn't enough, rumors say Todd may pursue full custody instead of the joint custody Kandi requested. That would turn this divorce from emotional to nuclear.
And rather than softening over time, these beliefs reportedly intensified. Even when Todd stepped up as a father, even when he helped run businesses, even when he clearly invested effort and energy, Mama Joyce did not budge. Every mistake he made was amplified. Every fight he had with Kandi was interpreted as proof. Every financial decision became a critique. Even decisions that had nothing to do with money somehow became about money in her eyes. And imagine living under that for over 10 years, knowing your mother-in-law sees you as a threat, an opportunist, and a disappointment. Imagine knowing that even when your wife is happy, her mother is in the background whispering doubts. That alone could erode any marriage. Just when the internet thought this story couldn't get more dramatic, an old claim resurfaced from a woman named Mila, an ex-girlfriend of Todd's. She alleged that Todd once referred to Kandi as a trick, saying he was using the relationship to elevate himself socially in Atlanta. The claim was never confirmed, but the timing of its resurgence has only added fuel to the speculation that Todd entered the marriage with ulterior motives. Whether true or not, these allegations are now coloring many people's perception of the divorce. Now that the marriage is done, fans are divided. Some believe Todd truly loved Kandi, but the pressure, business strain, lifestyle differences, and constant presence of Mama Joyce slowly deteriorated the bond. Others think Todd was strategic, calculated, and knew that marrying a wealthy black woman with a massive empire would give him opportunities he couldn't build on his own. There are also fans who argue that Kandi, for all her accomplishments, may have struggled to balance motherhood, business expansion, fame, and emotional availability. And then, of course, there are those who simply believes the marriage ran its course, and 11 years should be seen as a success, not a failure. But almost everyone agrees on one thing. Mama Joyce is probably celebrating somewhere, convinced she saw the truth long before anyone else did. So drop your thoughts in the comments, not to accuse or assume, but simply to share how the moment felt to you. Does silence create unnecessary confusion? Or can speaking less sometimes be the healthiest response? If you appreciated this slow, thoughtful breakdown, give the video a like. It helps the channel reach viewers who prefer depth over drama and reflection over outrage. And if you want to follow how this story evolves, if clarity ever comes, or if future moments reshape what this silence meant, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Because sometimes the most telling moments are the ones where nothing is said at all.